Beyblade G-Revolution is not a good game. It's not even a bad game. It's weird. But for some reason, I really like it. This obscure Game Boy Advance title received incredibly poor reviews at launch. Critics panned it for its underbaked RPG elements and lack of clear direction. One review even stated, quote, "fails to be entertaining in every category." Suffice it to say, the game didn't exactly light the world on fire. But that was then. So how does it hold up today? Let's find out. The Beyblade series has always had a rocky history in the West. Many of the early games remained Japan exclusive for years, with the notable exception of Beyblade Let It Rip on the original PlayStation. Western audiences didn't properly see the franchise in game form until the GameCube and Game Boy Advance era. That's when titles like V-Force and later G-Revolution finally arrived. To understand why Beyblade G-Revolution turned out the way it did, it helps to look at what licensed tie-in games were like at the time. Shows weren't just shows, they were marketing engines. An anime would air in the afternoon, the toys would hit the store shelves the next day, and somewhere in that wave, a video game would quietly release alongside them. Most of these games were built quickly and, as a result, often felt shallow. There were exceptions, of course. Some Dragon Ball and Yu-Gi-Oh titles found their footing, but broadly speaking, licensed adaptations were rarely prestige projects. Many tie-ins from that era felt like they were developed against a ticking clock, and that was the norm. The goal wasn't to create a definitive, system-pushing adaptation. It was to capitalize on the momentum while the brand was still hot. If the show was peaking, the game had to be out, even if it meant that it would have underdeveloped mechanics or awkward design choices. This was further exacerbated as Beyblade, more than most properties, was a toy-first phenomenon. The spinning tops were the main attraction. The anime existed to dramatize them. The game then had the awkward task of translating a very tactile, physical toy into a digital format, and doing it fast enough to ride the wave of popularity. Kinda insane if you think about it. As such, there's almost a prototype-like quality to G-Revolution. It feels less like a carefully considered adaptation, and more like a product designed to complete a triangle: show, toy, and game. The objective wasn't to redefine handheld gaming. It was to reinforce brand synergy across every platform kids interacted with. So for this video, I'm not going to focus on the story. If someone wants the narrative, the anime handles that far better. What's more interesting here is the gameplay loop. At its core, G-Revolution presents itself as an RPG. It's structured a bit like Pokemon, at least on the surface. There's a top-down perspective, an overworld to walk in, and various Beyblades to collect and customize. The basic flow goes like this: you move around different areas, talk to NPCs, initiate battles, win matches, repeat. The battles are actually interesting, mainly because there's a bit of strategy involved. At the start of each match, you choose your launcher and ripcord. These items define the speed of your Beyblade. Once you decided on your loadout, the game throws you into a small timing minigame to launch your Beyblade. The better you time your button presses, the higher your starting speed will be. And since speed also determines how long you stay in the fight, a good launch matters quite a bit. Once the battle begins, you can charge your Beyblade's attacks up to 3 levels: blue, green, and red. The blue charge is quick and relatively cheap, letting you land fast hits. Green takes a bit longer but sends your Beyblade into a zigzag motion that can catch opponents off guard. Red is the most powerful attack, but it takes the longest to charge and leaves you wide open while you're building it up. Defensive moves follow a similar tiered structure. Blue is the weakest defense and red is the best. All of these actions drain your speed, so every decision carries a bit of risk. Attack too aggressively and you'll burn through your stamina. Play too cautiously and your opponent might slowly chip away at you. Where the system really shines, though, is in its evasion mechanics. At any moment, you can dodge or jump using the shoulder buttons. If an opponent misses an attack, they lose speed, which means that careful movement can actually turn the tide of a fight. With enough patience and awareness, it's possible to defeat much stronger opponents simply by avoiding their hits and letting them wear themselves out. It can take a while, but when it works, it feels surprisingly satisfying. Then there's customization. It's not especially deep. Swapping parts doesn't radically transform how a Beyblade behaves, and you're not unlocking entirely new mechanics either. But the system does nudge you towards a different archetype. You can create defensive builds that prioritize stamina, aggressive setups that focus on attack power, and more technical configurations that aim for balance. Most parts are either purchased from shops or salvaged from Beyblades won in battle, but occasionally parts can be found while exploring the overworld. And that's actually a nice touch, it gives exploration a purpose. Even if the environments themselves are fairly simple, the possibility of finding a new component adds a small layer of discovery what would otherwise be a purely linear progression system. It's not transformative, but it's enough to make wandering around feel slightly more intentional. Overall, if I had to describe it, I'd say the game wants to be deeper than it actually is, and that ambition is kinda charming. Visually, it's pretty clear where most of the budget went. It's the battles. Outside of combat, the game looks fairly simple. It has functional overworld sprites, basic environments, and nothing particularly detailed. But once the match starts, there's a noticeable shift in quality. The battles use a Mode 7 style presentation, with heavy scaling, rotation, and layered effects to simulate spinning tops clashing in an arena. It's technically ambitious for the Game Boy Advance, and honestly, it looks kinda neat. The music follows a similar pattern. The compositions are energetic and punchy, but they are overly compressed given the hardware. Technical aspect aside, the soundtrack does a lot of heavy lifting. It's this strange blend of Asian-inspired melodies that are then followed by high-energy rock tracks that occasionally dip into darker, more dramatic motifs. On paper, it shouldn't mesh, but in practice, the soundtrack gives the game a surprisingly distinct identity. This juxtaposition creates this odd contrast. The surrounding game feels modest, even undercooked, but the battles feel like the part of developers genuinely wanted to show off. So why does this game still work for me in 2026? On paper, there's no obvious reason. The sprites look clunky, the dialogue can be silly, the RPG system is simple, and the progression is uneven. It's not exactly a hidden mechanical masterpiece waiting to be rediscovered. And yet, there's something about it. Maybe it's the music, or maybe it's the slightly awkward presentation. Maybe it's the whole thing that feels a snapshot of a very specific moment in handheld gaming. Whatever the reason, the game has a pull that's hard to articulate. It's rough around the edges, but it's sincere. It's small in scope, but it's confident in its tone. I think some games survive not because they're polished, but because they create a specific mood. And that's exactly what's happening here. The game has a vibe that you won't find today. It's a strange mix of cheap production and ambition that makes it easy to sink into. If I had to describe the game today, I'd call it refreshing. It comes from a time when design language wasn't standardized. There weren't established best practices in the way we think of them now. Developers had more room to experiment, sometimes intentionally, sometimes simply because the rules weren't written yet. And that shows. The game is full of unusual design choices. The structure doesn't always guide the player cleanly from one objective to the next. By modern standards, much of it would be streamlined, tutorialized and optimized. And to be fair, that polish is a good thing. But when so many contemporary games start to blur together, playing something this archaic in its design can feel oddly liberating. It doesn't follow the blueprint because it doesn't fully know there is one. And that's what makes it so appealing to me. My playthrough clocked in and around 20 hours, and those hours passed faster than I could expect. I just kept going, kept tweaking my builds, and catching myself saying, "One more match." I had a good time. For me, Beyblade G-Revolution isn't a good game. It's a comfort game, and sometimes that's more than enough. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and press the notification bell so you don't miss a future upload. And to get in touch, just use Blue Sky. Thanks for watching.